Hello everyone, this is Philosophy 72 and this is week 5. So after this week we have one left, right? Next week will be the last week of the short semester, summer semester. So let's see again what we had done, right? I mean, remember we started with Descartes, right? The meditations on first philosophy. So we saw the establishing of the centrality of the self. I think, remember, I think therefore I am, right? I mean, that is the idea in Descartes, the subject, the self as the most central, the central moment. And in his philosophy, and then we did Leibniz as well, right, with the notion of a individual substance, many individual substances, and then we started with Spinoza, week 3, the deconstruction of this idea of the self, and with Nietzsche last week even more so. So today we do Kierkegaard. Actually, Kierkegaard comes in time, in history, a little before Nietzsche, the same century, 19th century, but he comes in, he lives in the first half of the 19th century and Spinoza in the second. But I decided to do Nietzsche first and Kierkegaard later because I want to do Nietzsche close to Spinoza. But in any case, there is continuity. And what I want to do first of all is because I don't want to be long today as well. The see that in the syllabus you had the words introduction to Kierkegaard and existentialism, anxiety and despair. Okay, so existentialism, let me say a few words about this. This is a movement of a thought in philosophy, a school of thought that actually started in the 20th century, a century after Kierkegaard, but the people who, and I can't go into that now, but the people who started this movement of thought in philosophy, existentialism, they went back to Kierkegaard. They said Kierkegaard was basically a forerunner of this movement, right? Nietzsche too, and others. Okay, so existentialism is the philosophy of existence. Okay, so pay attention to this because I had to be very quick. But what does existence mean? In the existentialist tradition, going back, right? These people, you can Google existentialism, you will see the name of many of them. For example, Jean-Paul Sartre, Sartre, very important, right? So, in any case, when these people in the 20th century, around World War II and after World War II, they went back to Kierkegaard. Then the philosophy of existentialism, the starts, is based on the idea that existence comes before essence. What does that mean? It means that in the tradition of Descartes, for example, right, that we saw this semester, but even before him, if you go back to ancient philosophy, Plato, there is a long tradition in which essence comes before existence. Essence is what something is, the whatness. Okay, what something is. Existence is the fact that something is. Okay, so you can think about these words, what and that, right? I mean, essence and existence. The idea is you have the essence of something and then this something will exist. That's the basic idea in Plato. It would be the ideas are more important, more fundamental than the material physical things and so on, right? So but with existentialism, pay attention because again I had to be very sketchy, right? With existentialism there is a reversal, an inversion of this logic whereby, you know, especially speaking about human affairs in the human context, the idea is that existence comes before essence, right? Something is, we know that something is, or something is, and then it is only at the end of, for example, a person's life, that we can say what this person's essence, if you will, destiny was. Okay, so existence becomes the most fundamental moment in the philosophy of existentialism. Right, existence is what comes first and what defines everything, right? So again, another note that I want to make is, what does again existence mean? What does it mean to exist? Okay, so exist, ex, right, is as often in English, it's a prefix meaning out, outside, right? It can be former, right, like, but also out, external, exit, right, outside. And the part east of the word means to be, to stand. Okay, so to exist is to stand out. Okay, pay attention to this, remember this, because this is very important. It is key to, if you want to understand existentialism and Kierkegaard to begin with, then you have to think of existence this way, of the idea of the fact that we exist as precisely this ecstatic moment and movement of a standing out. Meaning what? It means that we find ourselves in a situation all the time. The situation is the here and now. I'm here right now, but I will not be always here. I can, stand up, move away, and I will do something different. So every situation in which we are can be overcome, right? So it is this overcoming which defines precisely existentialism. I mean, in a simple way, it is this standing out and moving away. Okay, so if you think about life, that happens all the time. It happens to begin with, when people are born, right? I mean, birth, the place of birth, where someone was born, the family, the community, and so on and so forth. This is not of anyone's choosing. I don't choose the place where I was born, but after that, I make a variety of choices. I can stay in the town, the place where I was born. I can keep speaking the language I was born in, being, a member of that religion and so on, or I can learn a different language and speak that one more than the first original language that I was brought in. I can convert to another religion or stop believing altogether, and so on and so forth. There is this openness. Okay, so the situation, and you will find, because I had to anticipate in the book by Kierkegaard, right, that you are reading, you're not reading the whole thing, right, it's from page 9 to page 85, you find words like finitude, infinitude, necessity, and possibility. It is the same idea. Finitude is a finite, limited situation. Precisely, necessity is the place where I am now. I am necessarily here, right? But then you have, in addition to finitude and together, in a dialectical relationship with finitude, infinitude, right? I can exit this situation, I can push the limits, I can change my situation. In addition to necessity, you have possibility. There is always possibility, which is the same as freedom. But what is freedom? Freedom is precisely this uncertainty, this indeterminacy about the future. Okay, where I had to make choices. The choice is very important in the existentialist type of philosophy, but it is precisely because I make choices. I make a choice now to change my situation, to exit my finitude, to, you will find the word in the book as Kierkegaard says, to infinitize myself. Right, but when I infinitize myself, then I will find myself in a new situation, which is also finite, one of finitude. I can exit this situation of necessity, right? And I can, move into something new, which is possible. But all this happens with a degree of anxiety. So you see the word anxiety in the syllabus, right? Anxiety in the book to end despair. So that's the idea. So that these are the two, some of the two fundamental words. Okay, so for now we have seen existence, right? To exist as to stand out, right? I hope this is clear. Standing out, constant standing out. Then you have anxiety, right? I mean, when you make a choice, especially an important choice, there is always a degree of anxiety, especially in society today, you know, where anxiety is everywhere, right? I mean, think about the current pandemic. I mean, we don't know what is going to happen in the near future and even after that. I mean, but in any case, so there is anxiety at all levels of life, personal, collective, and so on, right? And despair. Despair is one word that you find a lot in this book. The Sickness unto Death, the title of this book, right, by Kierkegaard, is precisely despair. And as you read, especially the highlighted sections, as always, right? But read the whole thing, you will see that despair is inevitable in life, and not to despair, not to be aware of experiencing despair, is another form, and maybe a worse form of despair. Okay, so think about that. The opposite of despair is hope, right? So there is always, of course, hope, but also think about the fact that, right? I mean, as we move into new situations in life, right? We always experience this degree of indeterminacy. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So this is what really then ultimately Kierkegaard is speaking about. For the journal entry suggestion, right, I use this quote: a self which has no possibility precisely is in despair, and so is in turn the self which has no necessity. So you will find this in on page 36, right? So I say write something about this, but you can write about any other concept, problem, theme arising from your reading, right? I mean, if you go, and I want to be quick, but the question of the self, which is posed at the beginning of the book, right? I mean, if you go to page 9, I mean, you had this, don't worry about the first paragraph, which is beautiful, but the one that begins with man is spirit, but what is spirit? Spirit is the self, and so on and so forth. It is convoluted, beautiful as well, but the end of that paragraph gives us a very important idea in Kierkegaard, where he speaks about synthesis, the synthesis, okay? He says the self ultimately is a synthesis, right? And then he says a synthesis is a relation between two elements, two factors. So regarded, man is actually not yet a self, in the sense that the self is always in the making. It's a dynamic process that never ends. It is a coming out of finitude into infinitude, and then again from infinitude into finitude again. I hope I made that clear before. I exit this situation in which I am now, I will find myself in a new situation, and then I exit that one as well. But I can also choose not to stand out and exist. I can choose to stand in, and at one point you will find in one of the highlighted passages, I don't have time to go into that in depth now, but you will find Kierkegaard says then people become numbers in the crowd. You know, I do what everybody does. I become the same. It's just a repetition of the same, right? So, I mean, that's still a choice, right? I mean, I can choose not to stand out. I make a choice whereby I lose the possibility of really being being what I can be, the self that I must. Again, the self. Remember, the essence is not there to begin with. So I don't have a self to begin with. The self is always in a process of construction. Okay, so that's the point. Okay, that you have to keep in mind. Again. Like I said, I don't want to be too long. I hope that this gives you a sense of what Kierkegaard is doing. So understood then the self as a synthesis, and he will say a synthesis of the finite, right, closed, and the infinite, the open, a synthesis of necessity and possibility. I mean, now that I'm here, I must be here. There is no way about that. I mean, I'm here because of what I did before, the choices that I have made. So everything is determined this way. I can change my position, my situation. I can go out and so on and so forth, right? But precisely, in order to do that, I had to stand out. Okay, if I choose not to, then there is still a choice. Okay, that I make. And actually, I mentioned the name of Sartre. Remember, Sartre. You can Google that. I mean, he comes after Kierkegaard, but he says very interestingly, and this is something that can be applied to all existentialist tradition, that not choosing is not an option. I had to make a choice because, think about that, even when I choose not to choose, I'm still choosing. Okay, so the argument is similar to what we saw in Descartes in relation to thinking, right? Even when I think that maybe I'm not thinking, I'm still thinking. But here, in this tradition, is applied to precisely choosing and therefore existence and freedom. Freedom understood this way, not I do everything I want, I do as I please, but the indeterminacy which I am always facing. Okay, so again, read the highlighted sections, especially. Okay, for example, on page. Just to call your attention to something important, page. What is it now? Well, I mean, the forms of despair, of this sickness, this is page 28, right? Despair, at the end of page 28, despair viewed under the aspects of finitude or infinitude. Okay, so, and then on the next page, you read, this is the heading, right, the title of the subsection, the despair of infinitude is due to the lack of finitude, and then vice versa, the despair of finitude will be due to the lack of infinitude. In other words, in order to exist, in order to be what I can be, not simply what I am, what I can be, I had to have both finitude and infinitude. I had to have a situation from which I start, and I had to be able to go back to not the same situation but a new situation. But I also had to be able to infinitize myself. I had to be able to precisely, push the limits, change my situation, move things about, and change myself. And as I change myself, I make myself. I become what I am. I am not what I am to begin with. I become what I am. Okay, I hope that this gives you, a sense of what Kierkegaard is doing. Again, as always, contact me if you have questions, but do write your journal entry. Again, you can use the suggestion I give you about the question of the self between necessity and possibility, but also finitude, infinitude. It's the same logic. And next time we will finish, okay, with the next philosopher. Okay, bye. Thanks.